Checks are not the most common form of payment used in the world today. There are not a lot of people that still use checks, and some people in our generation don't even know how to write a check or balance a checkbook. My goal for the day is to have each and every one of you master the skill of writing a check all on your own. But before we can get to this, we have to discuss a few things, including who uses checks, the different kinds of checks there are, the importance of being able to write a check, and a step-by-step demonstration of how to write a check. But if checks aren't very common anymore, what's the point in using them? I will admit I personally do not own a checkbook. I am at a point in my life where I don't really use checks very often, and it's pointless for me to have one. There are at least 40% of people just like me that don't use checks. This number gets slightly higher when we look at an age group of 18 to 24-year-olds that say they don't write checks. At this age, most people are in college and just use loans to pay for their college tuition anyways. As they start to graduate, they will have to pay back these loans in large amounts, so this is where a check comes in handy. On the other end of the spectrum, about 28% of people aging over 65 say that they don't write checks. It seems that the older we get, the more often we write checks, and it also seems that the more money a person makes, the more often they write checks as well. In the same study, it was shown that 100% of people that make about $150,000 per year or more say that they wrote checks. This is probably due to the fact that they are making such large amounts of money and they don't keep all that money in cash, so they use checks more often. Most people don't know that there is more than just one type of check, so let's take a look at that next. Before we get too ahead of ourselves, we have to check our understanding about different types of checks. So there is more than just one type of check. The most common one is a personal check, which is probably what you guys have all heard of. These checks can only be cashed by the person whose name is on the check, but can be used in just about any way you can think of. The opposite of personal checks is bearer checks. These can be used by anyone who presents the check. Certified and cashier's checks are usually used to pay off loans and are actually issued by the banks themselves. They make sure that there's enough funds in your account and that the signature matches before they take out the money and send it to the financial institution. Traveler's checks are a great choice if you are planning on going out of the country where they use a different currency than we do here. These checks act like cash in that country's currency, so they can be very helpful. The last type of check isn't necessarily a check, but a money order. These can be ordered pretty much anywhere nowadays, and you pre-order them and prepay with cash. Now that we have learned all about the different types of checks, let's move on to why it is so important to be able to write one. So writing a check isn't hard at all and doesn't take a lot of time. In high school, you don't really need to use checks unless you're making a lot of large purchases and you don't want to carry all of it in cash. As you get out into the real world and stop relying on your parents to buy you things, you'll experience instances in which you cannot use a credit card, which are very popular nowadays. There's been times when you can't even find an ATM around to get cash out, so you have to write a check. Many small businesses only accept checks or cash, and what if you want to send a niece or nephew that lives across the country birthday money? Checks are a great way to do this because they can only be cashed by a certain person and are safer than straight cash. You can also avoid hidden credit card and ATM fees by using checks. And checkbooks also keep track of the money that you've written out automatically with each check that you write. As you can see, not only does writing checks save you money, it also helps you make large payments easily. So now that we know everything there is to know about checks, let's learn how to write one. So say that before you graduate, you have to pay off all of your debt that you owe, or the money that you owe the school. So first, you have to write the date. So today's date is February 28th, 2017. You want to write it just like that, not in letter form, just numbers. And then you would go on and pay to the order of. So this is who the check would be going to. And you want to make sure you write out the whole business's names. And then you move on to how much it is. So say it's a pretty large amount, $250.73. Then you have to write out the money in word form. And for the cents, you don't write cents at the end, you put it over 100. And then finally, you have to sign the check. So, to recap, we learned about who uses checks, what kind of checks there are, the importance of being able to write a check, and we also went through a step-by-step demonstration of how to write a check. So after my speech today, I hope that if you get stuck in a situation, or that you never get stuck in a situation where you need to write a check, but you don't know how to write one ever again. Thank you.